This is a traditional court, which is the means by which ordinary rural people most often seek access to justice. Gathering in families and local villages, the courts can offer an informal, inexpensive and accessible pathway to justice to more than 17 million South Africans living in these former homeland areas.
We were also trying to talk to the people who were quarreling at their homes and try to make a peace between some of those people.
This woman is testifying in a village court in Limpopo, where a number of members of the village have gathered to form a village council that will decide a dispute. But a controversial new draft bill, the Traditional Courts Bill, introduced by government in 2008, threatens the right to justice of this woman and millions of other rural people if it is passed into law.
The Traditional Courts Bill is a piece of draft legislation that's supposed to address the problem of administration of justice, access to justice in rural areas. It's supposed to replace a piece of legislation that was passed in 1927 called the Black Administration Act. The Traditional Courts Bill is supposed to overhaul that legislation by firstly bringing traditional courts into greater alignment with the Constitution and its values, and then secondly trying to improve the sort of harmonization of the traditional justice system with the state court system.
Currently, customary law occurs in most rural areas where any men from the rural community may participate in asking questions and deliberating over matters that come before their local village court. This allows the community to participate in the making and application of customary law.
We're challenging the bill because the consequences of the senior traditional leader being the only person forming the court operates to the exclusion of the rest of the community. And in terms of the Constitutional Court, the court has recognized that living customary law is formed by the community. And so in this way, the community would be denied their ability to participate in the formation of living customary law in effective terms. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the Traditional Courts Bill was drafted only in consultation with traditional leaders, whether the National House of Traditional Leaders or traditional leaders at national and provincial level. This is what the memorandum to the bill says. These are the people who were consulted, as well as the South African Local Government Association. But no ordinary people were consulted.
From the onset, it was clear to gender activists that this bill would not tackle the key areas needed to remedy the inequalities in traditional courts, but rather threatens to entrench the problems encountered by rural women in their attempts to gain access to justice.
The Traditional Courts Bill in Section 9 says that a husband can represent a wife and a wife can represent a husband, and in fact other members of the family can represent one another in accordance with customary law. Now, anyone who knows anything about customary law will tell you that it is unheard of virtually for a man to be represented by a woman, but women are very, very often represented by men. Even though it suggests that formally women and men are in an equal position, the truth is that they're not, because in accordance with customary law, women would be represented by men, not the other way around.
Given the ambiguity in the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act of 2003 about the power of traditional authorities to impose annual levies on ordinary rural people, traditional courts are sometimes used to enforce payment of such levies. In practice, rural people are sometimes refused dispute resolution services if they have not fully paid their levies, and can even have heavy punishment imposed on them for non-payment. This is despite the fact that the Constitution seems quite clear that levying powers cannot be assigned to traditional authorities. The powers given to traditional leaders under the Traditional Courts Bill would enable the situation to worsen.
Now the problem is that in rural areas people don't have official addresses. So when they go and apply for an identity document, they have to go to the tribal office to get a letter stamped vouching that they are a resident of that area. When they apply for pensions, child support grants, even to open a bank account, even to get a car license, they have to get this stamp. And you can't get that stamp unless you're up to date with all your tribal levies. And many people have refused to pay these things for decades.
At a panel discussion hosted by the Institute for Security Studies, Nomfundo Gobodo, a regional director from the Legal Resources Center, said the bill does not allow for opting out. This means that people who did not want to attend the traditional court and have their dispute resolved under the customary law could not choose to rather have their matter heard in a magistrate's court. This can be very problematic where traditional courts are dysfunctional, unaccountable, and do not dispense true justice because people would not have a way of avoiding them.
And this bill actually states that you have no right to opt out of the customary court. In fact,